Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. My name is Jeff. I'm the host of the podcast where we talk about all things HR, talent, HR tech, world of work. And we drop new episodes normally every Thursday morning, most of the time. And our guests are from all over the world, HR practitioners, TA leaders, practitioners, and then obviously HR tech experts as well. And so we have a fantastic guest here today. But before we get there, I just want to mention that our episodes live on GoScaleHR.com, our company website, which is being rebuilt. If you want to go to the podcast page, that's fine, but do not check out the rest of the website because it's being blown up right now. So it's going to be brand new next month. But this episode is actually a really good one. And yes, I know I always say that, but this is what it is. Smarter systems, how AI and automation are rebuilding the HR workflow. So workflow is a word that I'm going to be using a lot in the next little while. And I have started using it quite a bit. But technology, and especially with the AI explosion, has really transformed tech. And it's causing the HR community to really shift their actual mindset. And so we're going to get into that shortly with our guest, Christian Christiansen, who is a founder of a really cool company called 50 Skills. So 50skills.com. They're not based in North America. They're not based in South America or anywhere else. They're based in Iceland, which is really, really cool. So Iceland is a small country, as you know, and I'm going to ask him just a bit about that. But so Christian's going to join us shortly. But I just want to talk about two key points just to frame this conversation around workflows and automation. I think the first point is that automation is not new. This is not a new concept, okay? But what we are seeing is a shift from this simple task, automation to actually intelligent end-to-end workflows from simple tasks, but it's really end-to-end workflows that are fragmented systems, drastically drop manual work, and then even make proactive outcomes and choices. And so with AI entering the picture, we're no longer just streamlining HR. That's been going on for, 3 decades now. We're actually redesigning how HR operate. And so I think that's a really, really critical point. So the second point I want to make is, why does this matter now? And I think, and especially nowadays, I'm being told by all of my peers and colleagues and customers and prospects that HR teams are being asked to do more with less, and we've heard that. This has been going on for a long time, but I think it's even more so true now. And the HR tech stack is getting more complex, where there's a growing need to not just buy a new tool, but make them work together. So we've talked about integration, connection, all of that kind of stuff for quite some time now, but they have to start working, together. And that's where automation and AI come in early. And it's not just trying to boost overall efficiency, but also to be strategic enablers. And so today's guest is right at the center of all of this. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to tell you a quick story after I bring him in. But I want to welcome Christian Christiansen, who is the co-founder and CEO of 50.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So it's great that you're here. And, I just want to tell just a quick story about how we met. So I was at the Unleash conference in Las Vegas about a month and a half ago, and I stumbled across one of your employees, Anar. She was asking me, why I'm running around with my gimbal and my phone and taking pictures and videos and stuff. And so we struck a conversation, and that's when I realized that I spent 3 days in Vegas, and I walked by their booth a million times, and I'm thinking, well, I should probably stop and ask them. So what does 50 Skills do? So that's my first question to you, is maybe talk a bit about 50 Skills, talk about you, your background, and so on.
Absolutely. So yeah, 50 Skills, it's a workflow builder where you can basically map up your workflows, build them out, create AI agents, and add them into those workflows to automate the work that you're trying to do and save you precious time on basically whatever task you're thinking about. So if you can map up your process on a whiteboard, you can basically go into the product and get that process to life, and kind of see these workflows getting more streamlined.
So why did you start the company? did something happen? Was there like a pivotal moment in your career where this light bulb came on? What's your story?
Great question. So I've actually been working with startups for quite a while. I've been working with startups for about 15 years. I used to run a company in Iceland called Icelandic Startups, helping entrepreneurs with ideas. I was a startup weekend facilitator, going to these events where people with ideas would kind of show up on a Friday and take them as far as they could over a weekend. And one of the companies that joined one of our programs was a company that started doing really well. And I joined them, raised a ton of capital, like $30 million or more. And I was kind of this jack of all trades, responsible for literally like mapping up processes and building things out. And when you're in that role, it's sort of interesting. Like your thought process is sort of like, how are we doing these things? How do we want these things to get done? And then you start okay, what is the most logical way of doing that? So you ask peers about what they're doing. You Google online, you go to review sites, you do demos with software and stuff like that. And so I started building all these processes. Like for like any business, you're trying to build something and you're trying to like, it could be a product or a service, and then you're trying to sell it. And then there's like admin, and there's all these sub processes below each category. And now my role was building that stuff. After doing that for a while, I was kind of like, is this the way it's done? Like, is this really how it works? And I just felt like this huge pain about like, this is like in a perfect world. Like, how would I want it to get done? Like, I want the stuff that I'm thinking, the stuff that I'm mapping up on these whiteboards and in these tools like Miro, whatever. Like, I want that to work the same way I'm kind of mapping it up here. And that was really hard to do. And I didn't find the tools that were out there for it. And so that's sort of how the company started. It's just like a man on a mission to getting the right team together to build this stuff. And I was able to find some really smart and talented people to join me on this mission and get started with the company.
So that's a great story. Obviously, every founder has a story about how it started. So let's dive into our topic here. And so from your point of view at 50 Skills, what does modern HR automation look like? I mean, how has it actually evolved beyond basic task automation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and when you talk about modern, I think it's evolving so rapidly that it's like how it looks today will probably look very differently next year. So the ones that are most modern today, they're even going to develop. But I would say the employers today who are doing it right, they have an idea of what problems they're trying to solve. So that's like the ones who are getting it wrong, they don't have the basics right. So basically just listing up what is it that we're trying to do? What problems are we trying to solve? We're trying to make our employees happy. We're trying to make them more productive. We're trying to make the organization as a whole efficient. We're trying to make the experience right for everybody. There's a couple of these kind of subtasks under each. And then you break that down into different things. That could range from finding people, hiring them, onboarding them, the entire life cycle for them in the HR space until they leave the company, like everything across the board there. And then you can even go into all sorts of subcategories that relate to kind of teams, inner teams working together, things like that. The companies are doing the best part. They've actually figured out, okay, what's the tool stack that makes sense for me to solve this? What's the part that we want tech to solve? What's the part we want people to solve? Where do we want to have humans in the loop? Where we want tech to use it? And they've started implementing these processes to actually do that. So instead of spending like 10 hours on doing something, they're spending maybe 4 or 5. The rest is taken care of with automation. But make no mistake, like HR is actually one of those places where you also can't automate everything with tech. Like it's one of those roles where you physically need people with hard skills to be there. But making sure that happens in the right time, place, that kind of stuff. So obviously these tools, for this to work, they need to talk to each other, they need to be fully integrated and work in a certain way. It needs to be very clear. I kind of call it like the Ghostbusters, like who are you going to call? Like who do you talk with regarding what and how and why? Yeah. Like actually having built an organization where people understand that. But if you kind of like people actually get the way they should do things. And then having this governance of those tools is actually quite important.
Yeah.
So knowing what these tools are and actually being able to govern them. Now, a lot of folks will say they check these boxes because they have something in a drawer or something that says they do. But like there's a very big difference between an organization that's like works in this incredibly organic, dynamic way that it's just getting things done in a super productive manner because these things are done the right way. And so that's, for me, is the modern, like kind of modern structure. There is a lot of options of using stuff like AI agents that fully automate things from the whole chain if it's done in a certain way. But it's also pretty costly to set it up. It's very technical. There's certain tools that you need to put together. So I would actually say modern employers that just have the basic right, like basic things and fundamentals right, they're very rare to find. And so even finding the ones that are a step further that have already gotten everything up and running agentic is even harder to find. And there's a lot of stuff you read about and see in podcasts and stuff. But when you actually go deeper and you work with customers and you hear what they're building, what they're using, they're far less sophisticated than what you think.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest problems too is I think the reason why that there's been so much confusion around this stuff is that, and I can speak to this because I was a former HR leader for over 20 years. And I know that a lot of my peers, they would focus on the actual technology first, and then they would try to work backwards. But they haven't figured out their processes first, and they haven't figured out, okay, so what is their strategy? Like, what are they trying to achieve? What are some of their challenges? All of these things, that part wasn't thought through first. So it didn't, quite honestly, it doesn't matter what solution or what tech they are going to use. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I mean, it won't work. So that's why I'm really encouraged by this, is that you guys are trying to focus on the process of stuff too, and getting that down. And then the technology should kind of follow after that, right?
100%. You have to start with the experience. You have to start with the experience for the people who you're trying to serve. That could be your customers, that could be your employees, that could be a mixture of different people. And then once you've gotten that experience figured out, you can then work your way back with a tech that serves that. We're trying to build a platform that's doing that the right way. We're always learning that there's something that could be done better. The platform is amazing, but we're always learning there's something we could do better. We're always getting customer insights. Hey, this is the experience we're trying to build, and that's why something here is missing, and that's why we're adding that to whatever we're offering. And I don't think there's any other way you can do it.
I totally agree with you. You mentioned about AI, so I just want to touch on that. Obviously, like, AI has changed everything. I mean, for me, it changed a lot. So how is AI starting to enhance HR workflows? So, can you give us maybe one or two primary examples where AI makes the automation smarter, not just faster, but smarter?
100%. And I think it's like maybe 3 examples is like the best way to work this story out. So if you just think about a workflow could be somebody fills out a form and then something else happens, or something like an email gets sent or a contract gets created, it's sent to e-signing, whatever. That's like a typical workflow. Now, a workflow with an AI added to it is pretty interesting, because just like most people who are probably listening, they've used a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini or Grok or whatever these tools, at least chat-based tools, are called. When you go into some tool and you write something like, hey, like, create this contract for me or whatever, and it's going to map you, it's going to write something up for you. Now that's like a chat-based, like, prompt is the input and the output is this text. But when you do that as part of a workflow, you can have like these prompts trigger automatically at a certain point in time. So for example, if somebody applies for a job, you could have a prompt ready that shoots out 30 different prompts. And these prompts are going to basically amplify the application that's coming in. It could be saying like give them pointers if they went to certain universities, or if they are, if they, the criteria that you're looking for, how they best match it. There's all sorts of things. So the profile that gets sent in, instead of just being like a CV and a cover letter, all of a sudden it's like a spreadsheet with like 30 different things that you've already checked for, which is basically the same stuff that your own team or yourself would be doing. Like that's an example of how you can use it as part of a process. Like it's basically the work that you typically have a human do whenever it receives information. I kind of like to talk about this as thinking of the world as a turn-based world and a real-time world. So the turn-based world is basically the world that we all live in, and we've lived in since for the 200,000 years. There's somebody needs a new passport or whatever. They send in information like, this is me, I need it, I want this. And it's asked for all this info, like a photo, wherever it is. And then you have to wait until somebody's free on the other side to process that information and get back to you with more questions or finish it or whatever. With AI, as part of a process, you can actually have a world that works in real time. So whenever you're requesting something, it could be an employer request or a customer request, whatever, it can be processed literally in real time. Sometimes it takes seconds, it can take minutes, depending on what it is. But like it's literally like that's the waiting time. And when that becomes the waiting time, we start to change how we do so many things around the workplace. And you really start to feel that productivity things. So I think that's sort of the best example of thinking about it is like, and I can go into different aspects of the difference between a workflow and an agentic workflow and everything. But like the difference is really like triggering off AI prompts and tools that you're used to using, but doing it in an automated way whenever you want that to happen. Like if there's something happening in your own system, if there's somebody filling out a form, if somebody sending an email, whatever it is, there's something that triggers it. And that can happen automatically instead of happening manually. That's sort of like the most simplistic way that I can describe of the difference between it.
That's actually been really interesting because I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and some of the feedback from my peers, obviously all of these people are HR practitioners, HR leaders, TA, doesn't really matter. This is not how they've been trained to think, right? This is not their natural tendency to say, oh yeah, I totally get this, sure. So what I'm seeing is that to really drive, mainstream adoption or mass adoption, we have to really focus on driving like a mindset and skills shift, change, right? And I know that, puts a lot of onus on, people like yourself and your company to really educate, prospects in the market and customers as to what these tools can actually do, because I don't think people really have a true appreciation for the power and the opportunities here. So just a question about that. What mindset or skill shift do HR teams need to embrace to really take advantage of the automation and AI, and especially when it comes to building and owning their own workflows?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think actually that's probably the most important part. What is changing the world now, and it's starting to change and will change in coming years, without a doubt, is that we will see more people, way more people, becoming operators of the processes that are run within their organizations.
Yeah.
So instead of maybe getting a task at your desk because somebody is asking for something, an agent that you've built, like a process that you've built and designed that has like an AI agent within it, the task is going to get sent there instead. And when it gets sent there, it's going to solve it in a majority of cases, or in a lot of cases, fully automatically. But somebody needs to decide how it does that. What is it going to have access to? How is that process going to look like? And so the mind shift changes. Like you need to, like as an HR professional, you need to think, okay, this world is about to change, and it's going to need people with hard skills and soft skills and people in between. And you need to figure out what are the tools you're going to use and understand how to use them. You're going to need to learn how to build these things up, map them up, and operate them as an operator, and having that overview. Now, historically, that's often been something that technical teams have only been responsible for, right? So you've kind of had, I like to call them the kind of the nerds at the workplace. And I've certainly been one of them for my majority of my life. Like you're basically like building these processes for everybody else. And it's only like these technical teams that do it. But like, if you make the tools simple enough for everybody to use them, then everybody becomes an operator in their own space. And you get hired to do certain tasks in your work. And that basically means, okay, what tools am I going to use to map these things up and run them? And what parts of this am I not going to do that? Like where are these hard skills that need the people in place, myself and others, to really do that human to human intervention part? And I think there are things that AI isn't really good at. And some people suspect they will perhaps never be good at. And there's things like intuition and creativity and deep human touch and connections that you make. And so those definitely will continue to belong. But you just need to figure out like where in the processes is it just admin redundant work that we can automate? Stuff like we're not rowing our boats with oars anymore. We have motors. Nobody wants the oars anymore, but we don't want to go back to those. And so it's basically about mapping these things up and kind of getting the skills needed to do that.
I think that's an excellent answer to the question that I get asked a lot: is AI going to be replacing jobs? And the answer is yes and no, right? But I think if we dive into the HR realm, we're not going to see a mass exodus of HR practitioners, because what's happening is that the skill sets and the things that HR will focus on is changing, right? So we no longer have to take on certain activities that now can be taken on by AI workflows, right? And I think people need to understand that. There are some organizations, I can't remember the name of the company, but they actually let go most of the HR department. And then a few weeks later, they realized, wait a minute, we screwed up with the right move, because obviously it's not the right move. So what they should have done is they should have, restructured in terms of skills, right? And then that would then train up your people, and you do a reorg from a skills and task point of view, but they didn't do that. So anyway, there's one last question: is if there's something that HR leaders and practitioners who are just getting started and we're just sort of exploring this whole world of automation or AI, what's the best way to get started? Is there one thing that you always recommend to people to do? Maybe one or two things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a ladder here on where people are. Maybe people are listening, like, where am I in this kind of framework and what should I do? I would, to start with, whoever you are, you should definitely start by playing with chat-based products. So if you don't already have like a Chat GPT account or Gemini or Grok or Claude, like, try it out, because by doing so, you start to get a feel for where kind of the limitations are for the AI. It's just kind of the pure basics. And we have 500 million people in the world using ChatGPT weekly now. It's only increasing in the usage. With other tools. So that's the first part. And I think you need to have some understanding of that first part to get a grasp of the next stage. Now, if you're already there, you kind of started using it to do some things. I think it's important to understand that, like, even if something doesn't work that you think it should be able to do, that might be because you're prompting it incorrectly, you haven't set it up correctly. Maybe there's some limitations that you've experienced that are true and accurate, but like very often it's because the prompts haven't been structured in a certain way. And by the way, like, all the models you're using now, like, they are the worst models that we will ever use. Like, a year from now, 2 years from now, these models are going to be considered so bad that we have today compared to what we have then. But let's say this ladder here, you've gotten the basics right. You're prompting every week, every day for everything you use, whatever it is. You've done it thousands of times and you feel, hey, like, I know this stuff. I would say the next step then is really to think about how you can add AI into your daily workflow. So if you're solving a task, like, how do you solve it today? And then kind of think, okay, in a perfect world, how would this get solved? Like, there's no tech involved yet. It's just about that thinking process. And you can start by asking the AI, hey, this is how I think I'm going to solve this task. Is there any way you can suggest to me to do it better? It's just kind of like these basic, it's like a trainer getting to learn a sport or something. You're trying to learn a little bit differently. Okay, this is how I used to do it. This is how I could potentially do it. But then the key part is really like, okay, my job is involved in all of these range of tasks. Like, most people, they don't do one thing at work. They actually do 100 or 200 or something. And some of those tasks happen on a repeated basis. Like, it's something that you do multiple times a day or a week or a year, whatever it is. And it can take you a long time. And it's really about getting into that process of, okay, now I'm going to actually write that thing down. I'm going to write down what it is that it's taking up my time here. And when you do that, try and identify roughly, it could be in bullets, like, how do I actually get this stuff done? Once you've gotten to that stage, you're 99% further along than everybody else. And then you can start to really think, okay, what tools could I use to actually save me the time here that I'm thinking about? So instead of you prompting manually every time something happens, you start to think of this as like, oh, somehow, like, how did I get this task? Like, there's some input. Somebody sends me an email, or my boss tells me I need to do it, or an employee contacts me and complains about something, whatever it is. Like, there's some trigger. And you start to change your mindset into like this process mindset of saying, okay, everything starts with a trigger, whatever it is. And when that information is received, what should I do? Now, that could be you just starting to work on it, or it could be some sort of process that you've thought about, like tools that you can use. And sometimes it could be a tool like something that we built. Sometimes it's other tools, but it's really about just mapping out this mindset and figuring out what works best for me. And I would say, just by doing a single workflow, a single process that you automate with this type of thing, if you're able to get that going for you, you've kind of unlocked this mechanism of seeing, holy cow, I'm saving so much. Just like, but that's really the magic, because once you do it once, there's no turning back, and it kind of feels like using a shovel when you had a spoon, and you just continue on that path, and before you know it, you have tens of things or hundreds of things, and your colleagues are asking you, how did you do this? You're sharing it. Like, that's where you go. It doesn't matter if it's like what tools you're using it. Like, this is the process to get there.
And I totally agree with you that if you can get past using AI manually, which I think most of us do, right? So about 99% of the HR community does that. And I just want to say that, obviously you can go to 50 Scales website, by the way, and I'll put it in the summary note, but 50scales.com. If you go to /template, you can actually see some of the workflows actually happening in action real time. And so I've been doing that, and it's actually really, really cool. And so because a lot of people don't have the natural ability to think in process ways, that's not my strength. I'm not a process guy. I'm a out there creative guy. But in HR, there are a lot of people who actually specialize in actually thinking along sort of process ways, come up with the process map and so on. Those are the people that you need to be working with more often. And that's what I've done. So, but anyway, you can go to 50skills.com/templates, and you can see some of the actual automated workflow builders in action. So it's actually pretty cool. So we could go on for hours here, Tristan, but I'm going to stop here. I just want to thank you very much for being here. I know that we're going to have many more conversations. And then for all of our viewers, this is the Unmuted Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Waldman. And this podcast lives on our website at GoScaleHR.com, also on YouTube as well. So please drop a comment. So Christian, do you have any last minute, last parting thoughts?
Only final part is just learn by doing. You have to spend time on just mapping this thing out, spend time on doing it, seeing the interactions, seeing some of the benefits. And that's really how you get started with the next step in this AI world that is coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I've done it. And, I've been advocating for this approach. If you are feeling a little bit nervous about sort of jumping into this, that means you are doing the right thing. So you have to sort of face your nerves. So thank you for being here, and we will talk to you soon.
Take care. Thanks.
Audio Jungle.